points I think are critical.
Hmm.
Never box yourself into one kind of a specialty. My family would be better placed to answer that.
And welcome to today's latest episode from JH Partners. On today's episode, I'm really excited to be joined by Farooq, the CEO of LogiPoint. As we know, this podcast is all about looking at digital transformation and innovation and leadership within the Middle East and in various industries. So I think Farooq was just a perfect person to have on today. Looking at Farooq with his career journey to date, starting off from his days in Maersk, to how he's transformed throughout that time with different holding companies into the role he has now, and also an advisory role within a disruptor within the industry. I think he was perfect to get on just to run through some of those really key ideas, that journey he's gone on, some of the learnings he's done, and ultimately what are some of the takeaways and what are some of the future trends that he sees coming. I think it's going to be a really interesting chat today. So Farooq, thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, it'd be great to just start with a little bit of an overview from yourself, and we'll go from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Oliver, for inviting me to the program. It is an honor and pleasure to be here. Yes, I have had, I would call an interesting journey. First, about 10 years with Maersk, where I was fortunate enough to be in Pakistan and UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, and then Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a couple of stints in various other organizations before moving and settling in Jeddah, in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where I have been for the past 15 years. I came here for the establishment of the first BOT container terminal project, Red Sea Gateway Terminal in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And then I moved to the group as group CFO. And over the past 5 years, I have been heading our logistics real estate business, LogiPoint.
Okay. And so for some of the listeners who maybe aren't clear on sort of LogiPoint, what they do, their vision, I think it'd be great to get a bit of an overview on that, especially as, you know, we've spoken before, and I think they are going on a very interesting transformation and growth journey themselves. And so I think it'd be great to understand kind of the business where it was, and then what's triggered some of those changes. It's not just simply what those changes are, but I think that for us, that's really interesting is what triggered that. Was it feedback from individuals? Was that foresight? Was that trends? That would be really interesting to learn more about. So yeah.
Okay. So first, what is LogiPoint? Okay. In a nutshell, we are Kingdom's foremost and pioneering logistics real estate developer. We design, develop, and deliver transformative logistics infrastructure in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And our special economic zones and logistics parks are developed as an integrated facility. So we are quite different from the traditional real estate developers, where once you lease out the asset, you are out of the picture and it's the tenant that operates. However, we continue to work together with our tenants when it comes to processes, when it comes to stakeholder engagement, and with various government authorities locally in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to assist and help them in grow their business and also achieve the objectives under Vision 2030 program, as it requires not only providing world-class infrastructure, but also it requires a lot of work at the soft end, at the back end of regulations and processes and procedures that we help and assist our tenants with.
Okay. And how have you kind of gone about instilling some of that change management mindset within the team itself? So obviously you're on this journey. How have you kind of conveyed that message and those skills to the team as a whole?
Actually, I would say that I was fortunate enough to establish and set it up from ground up. So I didn't have to, or the traditional approach where you feel some resistance from your old guard. We actually didn't have that. So it was a clean slate, and where I had to rebuild the team as what my vision was for the company. And secondly, around us, actually, the kingdom was going through a transformation. So the change was the accepted phenomena. Everyone was willing and ready to change. So that's why I don't think I had a tough time in bringing about the change. It was just articulating and putting forward our vision that was embraced by the whole team, and everyone started working towards that goal.
Okay, fantastic. And when you mentioned there about the country as a whole, obviously we're referring to the 2030 vision. I think what's interesting with the 2030 vision at the moment is it's not just simply a program. It is a change in the DNA of a country, how they are looking at all aspects from innovation, infrastructure, programs, operations, digital platforms, etc. How did you use your experience to kind of facilitate that partnership and ultimately kind of facilitate some of that growth? Because obviously LogiPoint is in a growth mode due to marrying up the integration of a country's vision and your business vision. How did you kind of bring those two together?
I think it was not that difficult. I like to call myself a builder. Because that has been my experience in the past. I enjoy it, I thrive. So when I moved to UAE with Maersk, we were setting up a new regional office. So I was among the first few members who joined the team to set it up, the policies, procedures, physical aspects of it. Then when I moved to Iraq, it was about reconstruction of Port of Zubair and rehabilitating it and development. And then to Jordan was about the negotiation of the first container terminal, privatization of first container terminal. And then in Saudi Arabia, the construction, development, and the start of operations of Red Sea Gateway Terminal. So I think it was in my DNA as well that wherever when I go, start to build.
Yeah.
Okay. So Kingdom, of course, was changing through its own transformation, and where we had to, and I came in and LogiPoint. So we made an assessment as to what will be needed in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and it required a lot of collaboration within ourselves, among ourselves, with our board, senior management, and myself, and then with the various government entities as to okay, let's set a baseline. And I think Kingdom did a really good job in setting its baseline in 2015-16. And this is where we are today. And then the discussions started to happen with regards to, okay, how do we need to, step by step, where is the roadmap? So and government was receptive to the idea of private sector participation, the recommendations we were getting. So we sat down with Ministry of Transport and Logistics, we sat down with Mumra, we sat down with various chambers of commerce, but we also sat down with our customers.
Yeah.
That okay, what exactly do you need? I think Kingdom in the past was a sleeping giant. Not much thought and focus was given to logistics infrastructures structure besides the construction of impressive road network.
Yes.
So that was given, that the road network was amazing. The airports were there, but then, of course, the operational aspects of the airports were not really to the international standards. So, and then in logistics infrastructure, and still in certain areas of the world, they are still considered as just the sheds. Okay, why do you need a warehouse and high quality warehouse or environmentally sustainable warehouse? So this is where we sat down with various stakeholders and started working towards, okay, this is what the Kingdom needs to do. And LogiPoint, of course, had to find its niche.
Yes.
Where we're going to play. Obviously, we can't be able to meet all the requirements that are going to be there. So we defined, okay, this is the area one, upgrading the warehousing storage infrastructure element of the logistics spectrum, plus facilitating and working with various government agencies in development of bonded zones, special economic zones, what sorts of rules and regulations could there be, how we can facilitate to show to the rest of the world that Saudi Arabia is here and Saudi Arabia is ready to do the business. And the old adage of and perception of that, oh no, it's difficult to do business and work with the authorities and people, so it's not valid anymore.
Yes.
So it has become a very welcoming nation where if you will find anything you can ask for, and if you don't find anything, talk to the people, they will make it happen for you.
No, I think that's some really good points there. And I think what's quite interesting, and I think this will be a really good next question for people to understand, is I generally find that businesses that are able to sort of identify that why we do this, what we do to achieve this, and then the why, the where, the how, and ultimately, I think a lot of businesses focus on the, how do we do this? But I think, from the innovation side, from your passion, I think you're very good at demonstrating the why we do this. Why do you care? And that care and attention is received by the customers. You mentioned customers a lot. You mentioned listening. You mentioned feedback, and this is obviously key for leadership. So in terms of the why, how would you sort of, for our listeners, how would you help them define? How did you define what is the why? I mean, and then they can learn from that. How should they look at their own thing to define their why do I do this? What gets me up in the morning? How does this enable me to best understand and serve the customer, the client, etc.? How did you kind of learn your why over time?
I think that's a very important question. Whatever we should do, there must be a reason behind it. We should not do things impulsively, or I just feel like it. Doing that prep work of why is more important than the actual work, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because, and second thing is, it should not be in your mind only. Put it on a piece of paper, write it down, and that helps you in rethinking, reevaluating your strategies, your priorities, and your roadmap for the future. So how do we go about why? As far research, reading, research, and talking to people.
Yeah.
Okay. This is where the sources of information is the key. That you need to get as much information as possible. And reading about the subject, I usually come across many topics which are not within my area of expertise or where I don't have any prior experience. I have moved from industry to industry, okay, where I had to deal with the experts. Now, I will never be able to reach to their level of expertise, but at least I can try to read about what they are saying. And if they are saying something which I don't understand, I go back and do the research as to what. And usually I do ask stupid questions from them to better understand the subject. And this is why I try to cover the gap that I have in knowledge base, so that the decision at the end of the day that they will take is a better informed decision. So this is how I go about it.
Absolutely. And I think in my opinion, I don't think there are any stupid questions. I think ultimately, if you come at it from I'm asking this to understand the deeper meaning, the underlying reason, and that is I know how you approach it. We've known each other a while. I think that's a really key one there, because sometimes people believe they've given you the information they need, but maybe they haven't. There's a couple of extra questions. They help you go a bit deeper. They help you get to really understand what is their why as well, and then ultimately it's that communication piece between the two. So in terms of then, if you were to look at from a sort of an accountability side of things, so you have your leadership, your transformation, you have your roadmap. And sorry, if I change the word accountability to more to actually, what I'm trying to say is, if you have your idea wrote down, your roadmap wrote down, your mission and your vision, it does make you more accountable. Are there ways that you review that? Are there techniques and styles that you've used to make yourself commit to a vision and then become accountable for that? How have you gone about that? Because I think, like you said, if you write it down, you can't always hit it, but at least you know you can adjust, you can evaluate. But if you don't write it down, then you're just you're never sure if you're missing the target. Yeah.
I fully agree with you on that one. First, the communication is key, and second, having your objectives and goals and aspirations written down makes it easier to follow the roadmap. Because otherwise the goalpost is always changing. Okay,
Yeah.
we may need to change the goalpost because we are not living in a static world. The world around us is changing. Our strategy, our approach requires recalibration periodically. So that happens. But then you understand why we are changing what we are changing. Okay.
Yes.
But if you don't write it down or if you don't have it communicated with the team members around you, then it is actually just in your mind and you can easily change it without being or without feeling being accountable for it. So
Yeah.
this is where it is. And second, I think is that ownership is much more because we are not an island in itself. So every individual cannot work by himself or herself. We are a team at the end of the day. So we have to have a shared vision, and that shared vision has to be properly discussed, bought in, communicated, and bought in by everyone. Then only as a team we will be able to achieve it. So I think it is very important that aspect of leadership. How do we communicate among ourselves?
Absolutely. And obviously you've mentioned LogiPoint changing its direction a little bit. Obviously the kingdom changed its direction a little bit. You yourself have become more involved in, digital innovation and so on, and we can talk about that in a bit as well. At what point, if you were to look back, or was there a moment, was there something you've learned to say, if X, Y, Z happens, that's when we need to make a change or a pivot? Looking back, could you have made those changes a bit faster? In retrospect, were there signs that you could have picked up on earlier in things, or are there, no, we picked up on it at the right time, but we picked up on it because we were looking for ABC? Did you have that kind of thing in mind?
Actually, when it comes to digital transformation, it's not something new that I got interested in or anything. I remember 25 years ago, very early in my career, uh, when I was in pricing and marketing, I started thinking of, because at that time our rate quotation to our customers, the freight rate quotations and everything used to be a manual process. Open the Excel files, read it, and everything. So I worked with some of my colleagues out of the office and see that can we do something about it? And luckily for me, one of my classmates from my school, he was into software development and everything. He said, let me give a shot at it. And let's work on it as a project and let me give it and let me develop something for you, which you just write the destination and it gives you the proper freight and everything. Of course, you have to update and monitor the database. But and when I took that project to my senior management over there, they were blown away that, okay, because it takes us about 24 hours to get back to our customer with the rate quote and proper details of and getting the details. But with this one, actually, we can do it right away within 5-10 minutes over the phone as well. And
Fantastic.
they encouraged me to go back. And since that moment onwards, actually, I have always been interested in as to how we can do things better, how we can take the maximum benefit from the technology that is available at our hands. And this is how, when I came to LogiPoint, I started off this thing. The key thing was, it's not about the availability of technology. And by now, of course, digital transformation is much more fast-paced than it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
It's having the right talent and the right team. That is now I can't do it myself. I can, of course, bring it in, but having the right team to do that, share the vision and feel passionate about it, and then drive that initiative forward. That actually, unfortunately, was my biggest challenge than what to do.
Yeah.
And it had that took me as a while before we set up or brought on board the right people and everything. And now we are on that track.
No, that's great. And it's a lot of that resonates with me and JH Partners. I think that's probably why you and I get on so well. We've spoken about this before, but over the last 2.5 years, we've looked at every aspect of our business in terms of from a process to a system to how do we make those improvements. And I think that continual improvement, sometimes it's something very big, sometimes something very small, but all the little small bits, they do make a big difference. And I think that's a great lesson for everybody to sort of take away in their business. Sometimes it's not simply what's this big project I can work on for 5 years and then maybe it changes, but it's what are the steps along the way, what are those incremental things, and they all build up. You mentioned their kind of talent, getting the right people that share the vision. So what would has over time what you look for in people, especially leadership roles, has that changed? And I don't mean change as in obviously technology's changed, so of course there are subtle things that change, but has there been a fundamental, what I used to think was a great person to grow and innovate actually is no longer that, or it's changed? Or if it hasn't changed, what is it you look for? So has it changed? If so, how that was, or if it hasn't changed, kind of how have you adapted that along the way? I think that's always really useful to understand.
I think it has changed because of the level I was at in the past. So gradually, as I have grown on the corporate ladder, of course, my requirements or understanding of the kind of people I would want to be around me has changed because of what I'm supposed to deliver and supposed to do. And because of that, I think only because of that reason, some of the things have changed. Of course, integrity and compassion, they have remained constant always. But this is given at all levels of organization. But now, of course, as you grow and take responsibility of an organization and everything, the team member around you, you wouldn't want them to be like you. But one key aspect that you would want them is ownership and initiative. You want them to be able to challenge the status quo, drive new ideas, share, discuss, and be open, transparent about it. And then only we can have a great team. Also, having an experience of taking the risk and being proven right helps. It's taking risk is not like a flipping a coin. If you take the risk based on data, research, methodology, and everything, then it's more likely to succeed than not. So being proven right is a key element of it. But how did you go about it is also very important.
No, absolutely. I think it's the taking a defined, educated decision versus the flip of a coin. I think there is a lot of people we see is that kind of paralysis by analysis stage. They plan and plan and plan, but they get so worried about making a decision that they never do. And they want to be 110% sure, but then they never do. or the information they're looking at starts to become obsolete and they need to look again and again and again and again and again. Where if you start something and, as we said, make small adjustments along the way, your initial plan will still stay intact because you will make tiny adjustments versus looking for that perfect moment when you've got 110% of the roadmap done. No, it's kind of that be 80% there, off you go with data, but driving that, but knowing that last 20% is to be adjusted along the way, because otherwise, if you don't have that flexibility, you'll never get there. I think is a really key one.
I think you're right on this one, especially in our region, where access to data, access to information is not really a strong suit. And this is where I think some of our governments need to work, that how do we share, communicate the data that we have so that it empowers the decision makers in the private sector to take the right kind of call, or make the right kind of a call and invest in the right areas and places.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a really good sort of idea there. In terms of then, we've talked you, the CEO, you the individual. So with the home life, with the family, etc. How have you managed to get that sort of balance right? Because obviously it is challenging. You're investing in the business, you live the why, you invest in your team. How do you give that time for the home life? How do you get that balance?
It's a very interesting question, and I think my family would be better placed to answer that than I would. But obviously, family is an important part of a person's life. And I was fortunate enough, of course, the way I was raised by my parents, and then the kind and the life partner I got is that very understanding, very accommodating. Uh, Obviously, when your parents are there, they want the only thing they want you is to succeed. So they don't really care much how much time you spend at home, as long as you are focused on your career and growth and also becoming a better person. So these are the key goals about parents would have from it. But the real change happens when you get married and you start your family of your own.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough in that my wife moved around with me to some of the exotic places I worked in. And then for the past 15 years or so, one of the reasons why I have settled in Jeddah in one place as against a move every 2 years in the past was actually my family really liked this place. And then I got, from career perspective, I got the opportunities to do whatever I wanted to do. So the group I got was now, balancing work-life balances is always a question. So there are times when we are fully dedicated to the work because our work is not 8 to 5 every day and then you are back. We go through peaks and troughs. So obviously, sometimes if we are busy, then we make up for that time and other or during occasions and everything. And also, our role in logistics is 24 hours a day. There are certain emergencies and everything. So my family has seen me since the beginning like this, and they have accepted it. But they also fully support it. That my wife has been a professional herself, so she understands the requirements.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I myself am traveling, and in fact, we'll be meeting up next week and things. And obviously, telling my 5-year-old daddy's away next week, and oh, you're gonna miss this or you're gonna miss that. But again, I think everyone's family kind of, if you give them the right time, give them the support at the right time, then they obviously will support you and you support them. So no, I completely understand that. In terms of I think what's quite interesting is the piece of advisory work that you're doing at the moment with a bit of a disruptor in the sector. And it'd be great to see a little bit how you got involved with that, and B, it's taking me into the question of what would be some of your advice for future leaders. What do they need to maybe be thinking of from a growth set, skill set, etc. And it's kind of tying those two in. You're currently involved in as an advisory role on with that Invex, and just sort of seeing how does that tie into what you would advise people for them in the future as well. It doesn't need to be specific about them, but you understand what I mean. Like, has that given you different ideas to in the future? What are we looking for, and how are we going to see that grow?
Actually, it's an interesting point. When I joined LogiPoint, and even as we start working on our digital transformation journey, so we were engaged with various outside parties, vendors, consultants, and everything. And actually, one of those actually commented on, okay, how can you reduce the wastage in your system? Because we are in the logistics industry, which is with one of the highest carbon footprint globally. And the kind of wastage is there in the materials, in the inventories and everything. Can you do something about it?
Yeah.
Okay. So I said, okay, traditionally what do you do is basically you sell it out as a scrap, destroy it into water. So can we come up with some sort of a circular supply chain platform that enables people to present whatever they have so that a person's maybe refuse or trash could be a treasure for someone else and they can take advantage of it. Then as a part of overall this, we can reduce the total absolute amount of wastage that is happening there.
Okay.
And this is how this whole idea was developed, and we started working together. And about a year and a half we spent on preparing the plan, developing something, hashing out the ideas and the concepts and everything to come up with some sort of it. So this is how this whole journey started. And now it has taken a shape of its own, where it's growing, people are coming on board, and it is developing into an organization itself. And of course, now I have both hats, so it helps LogiPoint in a way and everything. And then my experience of LogiPoint helps them establish and set it up on sound foundations to grow further and future and tap into the other markets.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So this is how it's a give or take kind of a thing, and I am happy that I have been able to help them with the knowledge and experience I have gained. And then I'm also happy that LogiPoint is benefiting one way or another, facilitating its customers that, okay, if you have any use of materials or discarding, disposal of, because we do have, since we work in places, so we do have sometime discarded cargo, forgotten, people don't take deliveries. So this is where we take it to them.
Okay. And so then, as we've kind of said there, you're imparting your knowledge, they're effectively almost giving some back in a way. Has that changed your perceptions of talent in the future? So if you were to advise a future leader, someone that's aspiring in the next few years to step into a CEO role, etc., what would be your kind of advice to them around, this is where I see big areas of growth from a human capital perspective. If this is an area you're weak in, this is something you really need to address in your own personal development, because I see, ABC being key to the next 5-10 years growth for any CEO, as it were. Is there anything like that you could impart?
I think there are. So at the base of it, first of all, two elements I think are critical. Never box yourself into one kind of a specialty. Don't say that you are a finance person or an IT person or an engineer or a doctor itself if you want to go further. Yes, of course, engineering and medical requires specialist knowledge and everything, and those people. But if you are in a business environment, don't box yourself in, oh, okay, I'm a finance specialist and this is where, unless you your ultimate goal is to be a CFO. And even at that time, the boundaries and the roles, the boundaries between the roles have been so fluid lately that you can't really be a true CFO without knowing the IT industry, without knowing the general management's marketing, I think. So This is how it is. So one, don't box yourself up. Second, technology is here to stay. Try as much as possible to understand, learn, and use technology. I think these two are now the key element, the base elements.
Yes.
Of course, then comes the software elements where, okay, ownership and decision making in uncertain environments and adaptability. These three key. We live in a changing environment. We thought we were out of COVID, and suddenly we have geopolitical issues in Red Sea, which keeps us on our toes nowadays. Absolutely. That, okay, how do we assist? How do we fulfill the needs and assist our customers so that we could minimize the impact on them? So adaptability and resilience is very important. Then, of course, ownership of whatever we do.
Yeah.
And of course, then we have a world at our feet.
No, and I think they're really good points. And I think especially, having the frameworks in place that when external factors like COVID, like the current Red Sea situation, things, they are external factors. They have deep-rooted other issues there, and you could talk for hours on those. But ultimately, how do you keep your framework set, but still adapting? And I mean, that all goes back to your keys around adaptability, your keys around knowing what your roadmap is. I think your keys around the communication piece, your keys around listening to that feedback, they all help you adjust and slightly pivot, but still keeping on that journey. So I think they're all super important. In terms of sort of getting, I could talk to you for hours, but in terms of sort of moving towards the wrapping up, because I don't want to take up all your time. So as sort of you're continuing to grow yourself, the business continuing to grow, and Saudi Arabia continues to grow, do you see beyond 2030 And I know it's a very crystal ball question, but what would be what do you believe the trends beyond 2030 are going to look like for Saudi Arabia? I mean, it's going to be a very different country to where it is now. It's doing a fantastic job on that change journey. But what might be your 1, 2, 3, or 1 or 2 key predictions of, I think these will be 2040, 2050, 2060 visions beyond, because there's so much more growth potential than, beyond 2030, we're never going to get it all done in time. What do you see those maybe being?
A very interesting question on this one. Let me say 2030, Vision 2030, of course, set some objectives, the targets and the goals for 2030. But I don't really think that the objective of Vision 2030 was to achieve those targets.
Yeah.
it was more to set the direction, to set the course to achieving those targets. Now, some of those we will achieve, some of those we may miss, some of those we will exceed. Okay?
Yes.
So that is there. But I think the key goal was to put us on that path to start thinking differently.
Absolutely.
Which I think Vision 2030 has already succeeded in it.
100%.
Now the question is, of course, when the investments are taking place, what initiatives are being implemented, and these things will be tweaked, adjusted, adapted as situations change. Because when the Vision 2030 program was launched, it was 14 years, so 2016, 17 to 2030. The world has changed since 2016 already.
Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we have to follow the course. Now, if we follow the course, the subsequent growth developments or opportunities will keep on continuing. Let's not forget that we already have 2034 World Cup, which is happening. So that is there. Then what is happening around in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with the increase in tourism, both religious and non-religious tourism, the developments of giga projects. So they will set their own growth path beyond Vision 2030. I think by 2030, they will only be at the first phase of whatever they aspire to do. So once they do it, we will have a lot more to think about and deliver beyond 2030.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I think it's, like we said, it's the inclusion in BRICS, Expo, the World Cup, all of these other things that are there as well, I think are really good and exciting journey to be on. In terms of sort of closing remarks then, if you were to look back on your career and offer 1 piece of advice or 2 pieces of advice to our listeners, what might that be in terms of, if I had my time again, I've been really happy with a lot of things I've done, and I know you have to try something to learn, etc. So there is a lot of, you don't always get it right, but you learn from it. But is there anything you would have done different, and that different may not be changing it, that different might be committing more to something, or going harder at something, or taking a bigger risk? So it may not be a regret in terms of doing something, it might be a regret I didn't do as much. Is there any sort of learning you could offer to our listeners off that?
I think the second part of the question was much more relevant. I would have done many of the things differently. I think there is no substitute for experience. Okay, looking, and hindsight is 2020 any which ways. So that is good time. But yes, sometimes when you are going after a goal, objective, or something, the doubts creep in. Okay, where you start doubting yourself, start thinking of alternatives. If it is not being successful, should I change course, or when should I change course, and everything. If you have done your homework, then commit to it, go after it. Unless the world changes around you, I think they stay the course. So giving up is easy in a changing world when you are not feeling certain about yourself. I think there were quite a few things where I should have pursued, which I did not. And second thing, time is really, really precious.
Yes.
Okay. And sometimes we get into our comfort zone in the sense, okay, let me write it out and then see what happens. Let's not wait to write it out. Do something about it, change it, and move ahead. So I think looking back, there are a few areas where I think I could have delivered a lot more, which I couldn't, and I gave myself one reason or another to not do it, which I think is there. But would I have done anything differently? Maybe not. It's just
No,
that
I mean,
with more passion.
Yeah, and I mean, look, that's a great one in terms of, that I think that end statement there around, commit to the change, go for it. I think that's really key. And I mean, you won't regret it. You need to, there's not giving up immediately, but there's not getting complacent. And I mean, it is a fine line between the two. And I think again, it goes back to your piece earlier on, how do you see when you've gone too far? It's that reflection piece. It's the going back to what is the goal and the vision. What have I wrote down? Where am I on that roadmap? Oh, I intended to do X, Y, Z in 2024. It's now 2026. My gosh, where did even 2025 go? We need to be, I need to do something about this. I think that's a really good takeaway for people is have your goals, write it down, keep an assessment on that, so ultimately you don't give up, but you don't become complacent going, oh, it'll work, because sometimes you do need to pivot and change. But yeah, getting that balance right is a definite skill in itself. So it's definitely something people can take away. But look, from my side, thank you so much for today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Again, we'll be catching up soon in person and things, so I look forward to that. But as regards today with the podcast, thank you so much for your time, and wish you a great day. Thank you, Farooq.
Thank you very much, Oliver, and have a nice day to you as well. Look forward to seeing you in person.
Thanks.
All right. Take care. Thanks.